So you've purchased your first piece of art. Do you need to frame it?
Well, if it's a paperwork, you do. If it's a canvas work, you don't necessarily have to.
Especially large canvases, they don't always need a frame, and it is something that you can always do later on. So you can buy a piece of art and then live with it for a while, and if you feel it needs a frame it afterwards.
Yeah, some canvases actually don't do well with a definition around them. Some of them look better when they're free, floating on the wall and just nice and clean without anything, minimal.
But paperwork has to be framed. So we're gonna go over the options with paperwork and what needs to be done. So framing has a function. It protects a piece as well as making it look better.
So paperworks need to be separated from the glass. So you always have to use one of three options. The first one is a shadow box. So the glass itself is separated by the depth of the box, and then the piece is tipped on using acid-free gum tape, and it's just left to hang like a box. This is another example of it. This is an example of what it looks like when you've got a nice deckled edge on your piece of art. This is a silk screen. This is a tablet piece, and this one is just framed right to the edge, and it's still shadow boxed.
Now, in more traditional framing would be a mat. This is what you normally see. It does protect the piece from the glass, so you have the mat separating the piece from the glass. The reason you want to do this is if there isn't a mat or a mat board wall or an acrylic spacer, the piece can stick to the glass
Over time,
and this can ruin the piece. And if it has value, you definitely don't want that. So this is archival to separate from the.
Yeah. So paperworks generally, just to encapsulate it all into one.
Yeah.
They need to be matted or shadow boxed.
Right.
That's the bottom line with the paperworks.
So here's an example of a piece that has dimension. The piece has dimension, it has to be shadow boxed because you need a space between the piece and the glass.
So a box actually looks like this. So it's got a depth to the wall. It's a little bit
Right.
more deeper than a regular frame.
So see how when I put that on, that will be separated from the glass.
Yeah. The same goes for this. In terms of choice between doing a black frame or a white frame or a lacquer frame, however you want to do it, anything goes. We like to use a lot of white frames and black frames and silver frames.
Yeah.
Not as much gold these days, but I think that's more a trend.
I think it's safer to stick to the blacks and the whites.
Yeah, you'll never ever go wrong if you frame for the artwork and not for where it's going, but only for the artwork. You can position it anywhere in your house.
Yeah. Now here's a canvas. Canvas don't have to be framed, but if you're going to frame, here's a contemporary way of doing it. It's called a floater frame, where there's a space between the frame and the canvas. It's put like this.
And this is actually an example of one that's already been done. This is just a little traditional floater frame on a mixed media piece. And it's nice actually because it's got a good depth. It can sit itself on a table or on a desk.
Or you can take a more traditional approach and use this as a gorgeous gold leaf frame. Put it on like that.
That's an example of framing right on the actual artwork. Now this is an example of framing on the artwork with a floater frame as well. So the piece has some space. It's called a reveal. And then it's got a capped frame on top, and it gives it a nice, weighty, substantial look. And it's something you might see in a lot of bigger galleries and museums.
And what's gorgeous about this is the scale of it. The frame is nice and big and nice and chunky, and it makes the piece really important.
Yeah, don't be afraid to put a large frame on a small piece. It can often make it look like a little jewel or a little gem, and it's a nice little thing to do.
So when framing, think about your choices, but remember that you're framing for the piece and not for the environment, and that it's not about the frame, it's about the piece. So you want people to say, gorgeous artwork, not nice frame.
Yeah, so the artwork stands out, the frame is just there.